You're listening to Night Callers Bigfoot Radio.
Good evening and welcome to Night Callers Bigfoot Radio. You're here with your hostess, Lauren Smith. And tonight we're going to be chatting with Kathy Strain, who is a Bigfoot researcher, educator, and author. But before we get into it, I would like to ask that you show some love for the hardworking Night Callers team by hitting that thumbs up on whatever platform you're listening to the show on. And don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell for updates on the new shows and content. Because I have a lot of new content coming at you with the new year. You can find Night Callers on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, or any podcast app of your choosing. And if you don't find it on the podcast app that's your favorite, just shoot me a message and let me know, and I can move the feed over to that one so that you can listen without having to download a new app. Before we get started, I did want to give a shout out real quick to Justin Snyder, who is the director and star actor of the movie Path of the Beast. You can actually watch that movie for free on Tubi or Amazon Prime if you have Amazon Prime membership. And it's a really good movie. I wanted to give a shout out. He sent me this great shirt. It says Sticks and Stones Will Break Your Bones. Has a Bigfoot on it with a big stick ready to do a tree knot or break your bones. And you can find that shirt on Bigfoot US on Etsy. And he has Bigfoot items, he has Black Eyed Kids, he has the movie, you can buy the DVD there, the movie posters for everything. So you guys go check it out. It's a really great movie. He tells you ahead of time that it is a low-budget film. So with that in mind when you watch, I don't know about you guys, but as a Bigfoot researcher, 99% of the Bigfoot movies out there just end up making me mad. And so his movie's really refreshing because it's told kind of, he made sure to get the various types of researchers and all of that in there, all of their viewpoints in there. So I really enjoyed the movie. You guys go check it out. Leave a review if you do. All right, now we're going to go ahead and get to Kathy Strain. And thank you, Kathy, for being here tonight. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
That's good. I'm very honored to have you here tonight. So, hold on just a second. I'm having a little bit of echoing, I guess, so I'm going to drop it down a little bit and see if we can fix that. I get really excited when I get on the show, and I tend to yell, apparently. My podcast partner, Matt Knapp, he hates it. Like, he can't stand it. He said, we do a test run with your audio right here. He said, and then you get to talking about whatever subject you're passionate about, and you end up screaming at me. So, really bad about that. Anyway, so, Kathy, I have been wanting to have you on the show for a very long time. I'm very excited to have you here tonight. And we already have questions rolling in from the chat. So, yeah, you've been a very much anticipated guest. So I always start out with, how did you get started with this topic?
When I was a little girl, my mother allowed me to watch Legend of Boggy Creek. And it both frightened me, but drew me in so much that I just never could get it out of my head, Mm-hmm. And so when I was about in the 5th grade or so, I asked my teacher, what do I got to do to study Bigfoot? What would I do? And she goes, well, I think you should go into anthropology. That's what I would think would study Bigfoot. And so that's the path that I took, and I figured it out. Nobody's going to pay me to look for Bigfoot. And so, but I had a natural passion already for history and prehistory and the outdoors because we never went to like Disneyland or anything like that when we were little kids. We went camping all the time in national forests, national parks all over the United States. And so my dad would stop at every one of those, those monuments that say, a monument in 5 miles. And my dad would stop and we'd read it and all that stuff. So it was already part of who I was as I had an affinity for it. So I went ahead and got my bachelor's, my master's degree, and it just was a natural fit, and Bigfoot fits quite well into that study as well.
Okay. All right. Well, a heck of a way to get started. Most people say, they saw the Patterson-Gimlin film or In Search Of or something like that. They found a book at the library. So, I mean, that's definitely an interesting way to get started.
Yeah,
Kind of outside the norm.
it definitely came to me earlier than I never saw the Patterson Gimlin film until like much later.
Really?
Leonard Nimoy, I think it was that show. It's the first time, but I was already addicted, so it was too late by that time.
Right. Okay. So have you had a sighting?
Yes, I have. I've had three. I've seen
3.
yeah, 4 Bigfoot and 3 events.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so can you tell me about that?
Sure. The first one, and you can imagine that, I've been an anthropologist for 30 years and stuff. And so to get your first sighting is just finally, it's this goal you want, but it's also, you have other mixed feelings with them. So the first one was in 2012, and we were in Oklahoma, and we were invited, my husband and I, Bob, invited to come down to look at this area that the North American Wood Ape Conservancy calls Area X, and they wanted our opinion on it. And so we decided one year, let's go ahead and do it. They've been asking us for a while, and we said, let's go ahead and go. And we got down there, and I have to, I know people have said that road getting in there is very difficult. And as a Forest Service employee, I have driven lots of horrible roads, but that literally was the worst road I've ever been on in my life. I was fairly certain we were going to die, but we made it. And so the first day we got there, nothing happened. It was completely boring. And then the next day on Monday, the morning started out very boring. And then after that, my whole life changed. So it was daylight, and there's 4 cabins down there, and they all have aluminum roofs. And so starting in mid-afternoon or so, something was throwing rocks onto the cabins. And the guys, there was 5 of us there, so 4 guys and myself. The guys would run over there and see what they could see, or wet through the rock. And the second they get over there, another rock would get thrown on another cabin. So they spent the afternoon running around crazy, checking out all these rock throws. And they finally came back, and we were sitting in a round circle around a fire pit. There was no fire going because it's still daylight and it's plenty warm. And one of the members of the group who, I should clarify, so Area X is extremely thick with vegetation. It is just wall-to-wall trees or greenbrier or all these different kinds of vegetation. And there's very few pathways when you want to go from cabin to cabin or go someplace. There's just these narrow little trails. But one of the larger openings is the place we call the bottleneck, because it was the largest. It probably a long time ago was a road, but had really overgrown. And so I'm the one facing the bottleneck. And so one of our members, Mark, says, "Oh, I hear something walking," and we were like, "Oh, it's probably that fox that would come around looking for scraps." And the next thing I know, I see 2 of them. So I'm a hand talker, so sorry about that.
That's okay. No, it's a video interview. Go for it.
Yeah. But so I see a big one and a little one coming right through that bottleneck. And the bottleneck is like this flat, and then there is a slope that goes up like this. And they're walking right along the edge of that slope, right at us. And I think they were trying to get behind a shed, because that looks like what they were aiming for. But the big one was also trying to make the little one leave the area. So the big one would sort of go up the slope, but the little one would go forward instead. So they weren't in sync with each other. And so I stood up and I go, "There they are." And I ran at them. And of course, they were like, and they turned and bolted up that hillside faster than anything I've ever seen in my entire life. It was like they were on a bungee. I mean, it's what, and prior to that, they had been pretty loud. They weren't trying to be quiet. When they went up that hillside, they were so quiet and so effortless and so gliding that it was just like, what just happened? Humans can't move that fast. I mean, there was nothing I've ever seen that's fast. Maybe a gazelle, but even a gazelle, makes noise.
It was inhuman. in human speed and grace and
yeah. And plus, that hillside was covered in greenbrier and rocks and down logs and stuff, so it's not an easy location to maneuver. And so, and unfortunately for me, we did have a camera that was sort of aimed at that location, but I didn't give him time to get in front of it. Instead, it just filmed me running by.
yeah.
So, unfortunate for me, but anyway, so that whole rest of that week was just non-stop activity of rock throws, hearing something, smelling something, all that stuff. And when we pulled out and finally got to the highway to start the trip home, uh, we just felt like we had been through a war zone. We were just still just shocked and overwhelmed, and it was amazing at the same time, but it's just kind of like, you expect a sighting. You don't expect a whole week of activity where it's just nonstop and you can't get any sleep, and
Yeah.
you don't turn your back on anything because you don't know what's going to happen. So
You guys were on edge the entire time, it sounds like.
yes. So we had a pretty traumatic experience happen later that week where one of our members got rushed by one.
So he got bluff charged, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it was a little terrifying. And then of the five people who were there, four of us all saw the same thing. The one guy who didn't see anything looked in the wrong direction.
That's how that goes. So we actually had Bob Strain on a few years ago, and I remember him telling that story about you, like you pointed one out, look, it's over there, and then you just taking off. All they see is the back of you as you ran at this. Now, this was a few years ago. This was, I don't remember, I think we discussed it was like 7 years ago or maybe 5. Anyway, I remember thinking at the time that I heard that, you know what? I'm going to do that. If I ever have an experience, I'm going to do that. And I think a lot of people had that same idea, like, I'm going to do that too. And then when it comes down to it, I did not do that. That is not something that I did at all.
Well, I think I was so overwhelmed with how awesome it was that I just wanted as much details as possible. I wanted to know, and maybe the shock would have they go, oh, and they just stood there and let me run into them. That's of course not what happened. But, just can I get a little bit more information? Can I see your face a little more clear? Can I get a little more definition of that muscle? And I'm a scientist, and that's what scientists do. We always want data, more data, more data.
Yes.
More data. So, you're never going to catch one anyway, so there's no point in it, right?
Yeah, I mean, You're like a dog chasing a car. What are you going to do with it when you catch it?
I don't know. I was hoping it would say, Kathy, knock it off. We want to have this right now. No, I don't know what I expected. I just did it.
Oh my gosh. Well, I always admired you for doing that, and I was half hoping that you had caught one since I talked to you last, but
No, not caught one. They're quite fast, those suckers.
So what can you tell me about the other sightings?
The second one was then the next year, 2013. Bob and I were so enamored with Area X that we decided to really dedicate ourselves to the cause, I guess, or the scientific study that was occurring. And so he went 3 weeks by himself without me. He had a partner, but went there for 3 weeks. And then when he came back, I went for 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. And so the second sighting then was that first week I was there, and it was really super hot and just no reprieve from any breeze blowing, anything. So we were sitting on the back porch. I was up on the porch. Everybody else was more in the shade, and there's a little creek that runs back there that at least if the wind does come, it gives you a little bit of cooler air, but not much. And we're sitting there talking, and I'm a person who I'm always looking around because that's what archaeologists do. We don't, it's pretty unusual for us to sit and look at somebody in the face and have a long conversation because something could be happening over here. And I look up in the trees, just, maybe 40 feet from me at the most, and I could see the branch bouncing. And I'm like, oh, there's got to be a squirrel, something like that. But it was a good-sized branch. And I'm like, oh, that doesn't make any sense. And then the next thing I see is this animal crawl out on the end of the branch and then leap from the branch over to another tree. And it was about the size of a small dog, not a Chihuahua, but a Australian Shepherd size. No tail, flat back. It looked like a chimpanzee. And in my mind, I said, "Hey, look at that! A chimpanzee is jumping from one tree to another tree." And then I went, "Kathy, for crying out loud!" And so I said, "Oh, look," because I'm trying to put it in my own frame. I'm not
Right.
expecting to see a baby Bigfoot, and so I go, "Oh, there it goes." And so we ran over to it because it was right there, and we could just see the trees moving as it ran off. And then later that same week, another member of the group saw the same animal again. So that's that one, and I didn't get enough. I mean, outside the fact that it looked like a chimpanzee with a beautiful flat back and no tail, you didn't get a whole lot of details. And then the last sighting that I had was in 2014, and again we were there, and that same guy who didn't see the Bigfoot, we tease him a lot. We say he's seen more people see Bigfoot because he's always doing something else. Always got his back turned to the event.
Oh.
And it was early morning. And I was the last one up to, get dressed and come out onto the porch to start breakfast. And I'm standing there talking to him, and he's standing on the ground, and I'm on the porch, and so I can see clearly above his head. And next thing I know, this big, huge gray thing walks through. It's on the other side. It's in front of one of the cabins, but in walking a pathway, and it walks through the area, and then it turns and leaves. And it was huge and gray. And I go, "Oh, there they are." And so they ran over there, and they could find the pathway that it had taken down a log and across the creek and then over. And so I stayed where I was because I wanted a perspective of how big are we talking. And so I sent Bob back over there once they had come back, and I told him, see this location right there, go stand in that location. And here's Bob, and here's the other thing above him. Bob looked like a little tiny butterfly. Well, I knew he didn't look like a butterfly, but in comparison, he was just this little tiny thing.
Yeah.
And he's 6 foot tall. So whatever it was way bigger than that. And we think it's the one we call Old Gray that several people have seen in that area before, and he's just extremely large. So
those are incredible encounters.
Yeah, and then that doesn't, there's tons of sounds, yells, rock throws, all kinds of other experiences. And if people want to read more about it, they can go to the woodape.com website and read the Ouachita Mountain Project that's on the website, which kind of details all the things we've had happen over it was probably 2011 to maybe 2016, maybe a compilation of all that.
Those are, thank you so much for sharing those. I noticed you didn't run at the big gray one.
Well, I was further away, and I had the impression it was pretty big based on what I was seeing. I basically saw it from the shoulder down to maybe its thigh or knee area. So I was like, oh, that's a little bigger than I expected, but I never would have made it that way. That path towards there is really difficult to maneuver.
Right.
Yeah.
So I had a question from the chat before the chat even started. Stephen would like to know, and this goes with the topic, Kathy, have you found any other areas as active as Area X in Oklahoma?
No. I'll just say it out loud like that. We do have an area that we used to do our Bigfooting in a lot here just outside of our town up in the mountains, but it was badly damaged, the vegetation during the Rim Fire in 2013, and so it just hasn't recovered yet. But there for a while, it was one of the most reliable, you're going to get screamed at place. And then for a little while, there was an area that I was researching up in the Lake Tahoe area, but that died off once we lost access to the location. But no, Area X has got the most activity I've ever seen.
Okay. I know that since then they have moved that area. The Area X has been publicly announced, and now that group is researching in a different area, correct?
No, we're still in the same area.
Oh, okay. All right.
I didn't know it had been publicly announced.
From what I heard, I thought that they had decided to tell everybody where Area X was because so many people were going to it and they had moved it.
No, we're still we're not in that exact compound.
Okay.
But it's very, very, very close.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Good to know.
The original landowner was kind of insistent on us
vacating the premises.
Well, or doing something different. Anyway, gotcha. It's just literally down the street, I guess is the best way to put it. They don't have streets, but
All right. Well, I can say that I've never been there, and I've just heard a lot about that area from others who have gotten close to that area, not in Area X, but just around that area, and it's a hot spot for sure, still to this day.
Definitely. And there's other people that have stories that aren't. I mean, Area X is it's a mountain range, but the whole area in general has a lot of activity. It's very remote, and they don't get researchers there outside of us. Really, they don't have homes all over the place. It's a remote location, and so it's ideal for an animal that wants to stay hidden because there's plenty of vegetation, plenty of water, lots and lots of resources to draw from, tons of animals, tons of I don't think I've failed yet to see some bears every time I go, and there's deer, and there's just frogs, there's all kinds of animals and resources there. So
that's awesome. I know it's like you said, it's very thick, easy to hide there, and you could be out of sight within 10, 20 yards.
Yeah, easily. It's in the full swing of summer when all the foliage is in. Oh yeah, you can't see. You have to be really careful because you have a very high chance of encountering a snake, and that's not much fun. So
not
in the snakes.
Bears, snakes. Oh my.
No, I'm not afraid of bears. I'm afraid of snakes.
Yeah, same here. So, what has been your scariest experience? Was it one of those, or is it something else that happened that you didn't have a sighting with?
I think it would be the one we didn't have a sighting with. It was the first week of my second year there, so 2013, and we were sitting outside, and it was nighttime, so we had a nice fire going, and we're just chatting, and we decided we were going to go to bed, and so we had got up and tried to go to bed, and I saw some eyes through a windshield and of an animal, and the second two of us saw it, and they were huge eyes. I mean, but it was reflecting from the firelight, and that thing had just been feet from us. I mean, feet, and we never knew it was there. So, we walked that way, saw it, and it just dashed off as fast as you can think of. I mean, it was just gone. And then we said, stayed up for a little while longer, and then we decided we're trying to go back to bed again. So we go back to bed. Most of us are in the cabin. I had already taken my shoes off. And the loudest thing I've ever heard in my entire life happened. I thought a tree was coming down on the cabin. And so, I mean, it was just right there. It was so terrifying. And so we ran outside, and we couldn't see anything, but it was clear that something had just happened. And we found the tree the next day, but it was terrifying because we tried to go to bed like 4 or 5 times, and the second we all got up to try to go in, something happened. And so it was just exhausting but terrifying, because it was the one time I really thought that it would push the cabin down, push something on the cabin, do something. It was behaving erratic in my sense, that it was trying to egg us on or something to that effect, and didn't want us inside. It wanted us outside, even though it was extremely late. And so I was very unhappy with that. And when the team that I was with was leaving, I felt this kind of like, don't leave me here.
Yeah.
I don't want to be in here anymore. Take me with you.
Yeah.
But I did, and I stuck it out, and had plenty of other terrifying things, where something throwing a rock at my head, something throwing a rock at Bob's head. And, that's just not pleasant.
No, definitely not. Especially, this is the same person that ran at the Big Feet. And
I have a bad habit of, and I hope my mom's not listening, but I have a bad habit of just cussing them out. Or it's like when they throw a rock at me, I just pick up the rock and throw it back and say, take that, kind of thing. And it's like he understands what I'm saying. I don't know.
I think in a nonverbal gesture, you throwing the rock back says plenty.
Yeah.
Says plenty. That's awesome, though. I mean, it beats getting in the car and leaving.
Yeah, I did not like seeing. I'm glad I didn't see the full face, because that's one of my worst nightmares, is waking up and there'd be a face right there in the window looking at you, and I'm like, I don't want to do that. I just don't have any interest in that. But it got close to being my nightmare moment, but it moved off before I could get much else besides eyes looking at me. So
right. Oh my gosh. Okay, so what is the best evidence you've heard or seen or gathered to date?
Well, gosh, that's a lot. I consider footprint evidence pretty good. We've collected hair, but it hasn't turned out to be anything. We have, we do have a lot of vocalizations captured on audio that you can listen to.
Okay, yes.
And one of them includes some. One of the things I have heard there is that samurai kind of sound that you hear people say. And so I was sound asleep, exhausted. I think either some rocks were hitting the cabin or something happened where I woke up. It was very early morning, like 6:30 or something like that. And I heard right outside the bedroom window say, "Wawooga!" And then stomp off. And it was just like, it was obviously mad. And and I was like, I listened, tried to, is there anything else coming on? And so some of that gibberish has been captured down there that we have on audio that you can listen to on the website. And one thing I find fascinating about that is that you hear about that, of course, in California, the Sierra Sounds. And then here we are, 2,000 miles away in Oklahoma, and it's very, very similar. And when you hear it, and I know people listen to that Sierra Sounds and they go, "Oh, a human could do that," or whatever. But when you hear it in person, the depth of that sound, for all I know, he could have been, 120 yards away from the window, but it was like it was in the room. It was so deep and guttural, and if that's a human, first of all, I just like to mention too, we're always well armed down there, because that's, part of our mission. And so to try to fake something and practice it so long that you can actually get down into your
diaphragm,
your guts, and pull that out, just to what? Hoax a little anthropologist from California? What's the chances of that? And so that, I think, those audio recordings, I think, are going to be significant once the proof is found, and they start comparing what are characteristics of a Bigfoot that are found throughout the United States. What can we say up front? We believe this is what they're doing, and then go into a scientific, hopefully federally funded actual study to get that confirmed. I think that helps a lot with blending California, at least, or the West Coast, with things that are probably happening in the South.
No, absolutely. That would be very interesting to get that data, to get that information back. Back to your encounters. I'm sorry, but we got some questions from the chat, and I'd rather jump back now. Jamie King asks, and I love Jamie, I'm curious what the Cherokee in that area have to say about your encounter.
I haven't, well, I did talk to a Cherokee person later. I think that area is more Choctaw, I think, but I'm not particularly certain. I haven't really talked to those tribes there about that particular sighting, but they do, in their traditional stories, have plenty to say about Bigfoot and what their behavior is in those locations. So they traditionally, Choctaw, I'm going to mess it all up, but Cherokee, there's lots of tribes in there. They all have traditional stories about Bigfoot being in the area. So, the usual, don't go outside if you hear whistling, and, don't be lured into being a marriage partner.
Baby eaters. That's
Yeah,
the big
baby
Cherokee
eaters.
one. They're baby
Yeah.
eaters. So, tactical Bigfoot research had a great question. Does your educational background help with your research in Area X?
Yes, I do believe it does because it's in my mind. I'm looking for characteristics. A to tell me, is this a primate? Is this
Mm-hmm.
typical primate behavior? And I'm also, as an archaeologist, looking for anything that would give me any indication that they use tools or they use fire or they use any of those types of things. And so I think it does give me a slight advantage. It doesn't necessarily, you know, help anybody else necessarily. I mean, because that's my kind of internal, when I'm, every time I
Right.
see evidence, I look at it, go, is that really evidence or is that not evidence? Is that something another animal could do, or is that something that I think, well, that certainly is something that's indicative of what a Bigfoot can
Mm-hmm.
do.
Right. Um, Filmer of Bobcats wants to know, what would it take to be able to join this research team?
You just go online and you fill out an application, and then tell us a little bit about yourself. And we have members from all over the United States, and so we don't restrict that to just being local.
Mm-hmm.
If you're interested and you're in Texas, if you're interested and you're in Washington, and they'll vet you. So it's not just we take everybody. We
Yeah.
take people that have certain skills, and we have a lot of um, we have several anthropologists, biologists, filmmakers. We have game wardens. We have retired or ex-military. We have police people. I mean, we have walks of all over. You just really need to be prepared for what's out there, because it's not a walk in the park
Right.
location. It's You have to have a very good vehicle, and you better know what you're doing in the field, because if something happens, you're a long way from getting medical care. So we do have doctors too.
Okay.
So all kinds of people.
All
So
kinds.
yeah, go for it.
Yeah. I think I had a question about that. So you are on the board of directors of the nonprofit Alliance of Independent Bigfoot Researchers.
Yes.
Can you tell me about that? Because that was interesting to me.
Yeah, we're about educating the public. Providing our, unfortunately, our website's down right this minute.
I tried to plug it. It didn't work.
I know. I know. It always happens at the wrong time. But
Work
to provide education to the public on how to, you don't have to be a college graduate to do Bigfoot, but here are some skills or some things that we recommend that you do, so that everything you do is scientific. So if you find a footprint, take a photo, but put a scale next to it. It can be anything.
Right.
It can be a pin. It can be a ruler. It could be something that we will know what the scale is, so we can tell you, no, you're within the human range, or oh, that's incredible, or something to that effect, or how to document. Like if you collect blood and hair, the worst thing you can do is to put it in a plastic bag, because that will erode the DNA faster than anything you can do.
Okay.
You need to use a paper envelope, and so that's what it's based on. It's not a group that goes out and Bigfoots together, although most of those people we know, and we've been Bigfooting with them, but it's a way to try to provide education to the public or Bigfoot enthusiasts, so that when they do collect data or find evidence, that it can be preserved in the best way possible.
Okay. It's actually, especially for those that don't. I think I'm probably rare in that, but I don't really want to be part of a group. I enjoy being an independent contractor, going out and doing my own thing, floating from, I go out with groups, but I don't want to be a part of it. I like to do my own independent research. And I think that for someone like me, that would be a draw as well, because you can still share your findings and have a good sounding board to share your findings with and learn the ways to do it correctly. But you're not necessarily, have to abide by this group.
No, there's no. It's just a way of people to say, hey, if you want more education, here's where you can go to get that data, and so it's not you do it our way or no way. I mean, it's not like that.
Right.
And the NAWC isn't like that either. I mean, basically, we require certain things like gun safety,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't allow anybody to drink while they're in Area X, because we don't
Yes.
want any accidents. But they're not. You will pledge allegiance to this group and
Yeah.
never do anything else. Then it's not like that.
Okay, yeah. Um, so, and I'm probably skipping a few questions, and I'm not trying to, everybody. But I just want to hit on the main topics, and then I will wrap up any questions. I wanted to ask, have you learned anything Bigfoot related from your job? From your
Yes,
Okay.
actually, it happens quite a bit. So
Okay.
if somebody has an experience out in the forest, they usually either come into an office and go, I saw this thing. It's
Mm-hmm.
really common actually, and or they'll send an email to the main address and they forward it to me, and I always follow up. And I think what I've learned is there's a lot of Forest Service employees that have had their own encounters, and I'm really open, and I wear Bigfoot T-shirts everywhere I go. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't bother me at all. And so those people over the years have come to me and told me, oh my, this is what happened. What do you think? And I
Mm-hmm.
go, well, I think that's what happened. They're like, really? Why do you think that? And I try to educate them and stuff. And a lot of our biologists around the forest have been real keen about paying attention to that data. But I also find that my job taught me how to talk to tribes in
Mm-hmm.
a respectful manner, and so that they will feel comfortable in telling me information that they probably would never tell anybody else. And
Right.
so I think that's been the biggest um, benefit of being a Forest Service employee and having part of my job be in working with tribes, and then how to talk to people in a way to be respectful and get data from them that's very important to capture and get passed on, that it's not lost. When during COVID, unfortunately, we've lost a lot of elders, and
Mm-hmm.
it's, if maybe they had passed on some of those stories to me years ago, that they
Right.
might not be saved. So I
Right.
think that's the biggest benefit.
Well, it sounds like you've built a lot of trust within them, and that seems like it goes a long way. So I'm
Yeah,
glad that
it
they have
does.
somewhere to turn whenever they have that life changing encounter, or they're just
Yeah.
not sure what they saw or whatever.
Yeah, and it's happened actually several times where a tribal member had an experience, and they came to me with like, "What do I do with this?" And one person had a recording, and I'm kind of like, "Oh, I'll help you however I can help you, and
Yeah.
send it in to whoever I know that can do a better analysis, because I'm not an expert in everything. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know every animal out in the woods.
Right.
I don't know all of it, but I'll get you the help if you need it. So
That's awesome. I mean, I think it's great that they have someone to turn to and someone who's knowledgeable and not out to exploit them. Someone
yeah,
who has their best interest at heart.
yeah, it doesn't laugh at them.
Right.
That's, I
Absolutely.
find, the
Yeah.
biggest benefit is that I treat people respectfully. And
Mm-hmm.
out there today, if you say anything about Bigfoot, they just go, they give that smirk, and you're
Yes.
just like, I know you're making fun of me, but you better not say it. So most
Yeah.
of the time, nobody's got the guts to do it. But that's, I think, what one thing that every witness or person who's had experience just want to be heard, and they just want to be respected. They don't want you
Mm-hmm.
laughing at them. It doesn't get you very far.
It really doesn't. I mean, if somebody is brave enough to share something with you, even if you don't believe in it, I have a lot of people share things with me that, fairies and dragons and all kinds of stuff that I'm personally not really into. But, I've trained myself to say, okay, tell me why you believe in that. Tell me, your thoughts on it. Tell me the evidence to back it up, just as I would hope somebody would do when I talk about Bigfoot.
Yeah,
But,
it's the same. If you don't feel like being questioned, then maybe you're not sure yourself of what
right,
really happened. So,
right. So, if you wouldn't mind telling me about your book, Giants, Cannibals, and Monsters Bigfoot in Native Culture.
hmm it's
I
a
I love that topic. I love that topic in Native American culture. I think it's fascinating. It definitely has historical credence to back up this whole topic. Um, so, what led you to write that book?
well, that's kind of a long story. But when I was the district archaeologist for the Sequoia National Forest many years ago, and we were working on a project, and I needed to go over to the Tule River Indian Reservation to talk to them about how we were going to do an excavation because it was in the middle of the village and I figured it was going to have human remains and I wanted to be prepared before we started excavating of what did they want us to do when we encountered this. And it just turned into where I frequently went out there at night with potlucks and talked to the elders, and they had a thing for my older son is a flaming redhead.
Mm-hmm.
And they just loved him. And so I actually became a requirement that I had to bring him with me or else don't bother coming. So
Oh my gosh.
they didn't care what I brought to eat. They just said, bring the baby. And it, I don't remember now how exactly it happened, but I got to talking about the hairy man pictographs that are on the reservation, which I had seen several times before, but didn't know really anything about them. And they really had never met someone who talked about Bigfoot before, like I did, and they were, very much trusting in me because we had already been through this consultation of how are we going to do this project, kind of thing, and they just started telling me their stories, the traditional stories, and I was all like overwhelmed that there was, it was. I don't know how to put it. There's a lot of times as before pre-computers, before the internet, where you felt very alone as that if you believed in Bigfoot, you didn't really know there was a ton of other people who shared that same belief system with you. And so this was kind of so shocking to me that this tribe was going, oh yeah, of course we believe in Bigfoot. Here you go. Here's the information, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like going, can I write this down? Yeah. It's great. And so that became a shining pride for me.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, I gave a paper on those pictographs. The first time I talked in public was in 2003 at the International Bigfoot Symposium in Willow Creek, where I met my husband and then met a ton of people who are still very important in my life. It was a very monumental event.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I then started gathering stories just in general when I'd find them, oh yeah, okay, here it is. And I haven't really given it much thought until I was invited to give a talk down at the University of San Antonio. Is that University of Texas, San Antonio? I don't remember. Or is it? It's in San Antonio and it's a university. I think it's University of Texas, San Antonio.
And I can't even tell you.
Yeah. You think I'd remember that? By the, back then they were the TBRC, but they're now the NAWAC. And at that time, Craig Woolheater was the chair of that. And he said, Kathy, can you come down and talk? And I want you to give a talk on the same thing that you've done in California, but I want it for the southern region. I want you to tell stories from Oklahoma, Texas, that whatever. And I said, and I was like, oh man, that why don't you just ask me to juggle or something? It's just going to be easier to do that. And so I and you can always come at this at a certain kind of, Bigfoot only occurs in the Pacific Northwest. There is no Bigfoot anywhere. There's just that one that Patterson Gimlin got on the film.
Yeah.
And so I started looking into it, and I went, wow, look at this. There's just tons of information here. And so I gathered it all up, and then I said, well, what else have I been ignoring? And so I started looking into the Seminoles in Florida. I started looking in the Northeast up in New York, and I started doing this, and all of a sudden I had a book full of information, and it's just traditional stories, so it's just their information from like most of them are pre-1950s, and I have the citation where the story came from, and then I paired it up. I don't know if anybody wants to see it because I just happen to have it here just in case somebody asks me a hard question, because there's the book.
Yes.
And it's really quite beautiful. It's broken up into it's got beautiful pictures, but I have the in anthropology we use cultural areas is how we define. So California is its own cultural area. And so they're broken up by that. And then what's really neat is in the back, there's an appendix that has all the traditional names that I've gathered, what it means, what tribe is that name associated with. And so it's a handy little,
that's awesome.
What did this tribe call that? So if you want to know what the Miwok call Bigfoot, you just look up the Miwok and then you look up the word, and then you know it means it's Yayali is their traditional name, and it means hairy man.
That's fantastic. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's wonderful, and that's really in depth. And I mean, obviously, you researched the book very well before you wrote it, but or as you were writing it. But I think that's just phenomenal. So you can buy that book on Amazon, correct?
Yes, you can, or you can go to my publisher's Hancock House,
Okay.
and they have it there. That's the direct route. So,
Okay. Oh, I
but
think that would be.
I understand it's nearly out of print.
Oh, really?
So yeah, we've been talking about how we're gonna handle that. So my publisher, we're gonna what we're gonna do. So
So you guys have to go buy it now. This is your
it may
last
not
chance.
be there. Yeah.
This is your
In
last
this form,
chance.
anyway.
And that would be a great piece to add to any Bigfoot researcher's collection, especially if you're serious about the history of these things, about knowing in your area. So I know for me, you know, I'm in Tulsa, but I research a lot in southeastern Oklahoma where the Choctaw and Cherokee are prevalent. So that's something that really interests me is the Native American history with Bigfoot. So
yeah. And what do tribes have to say about that? What normally occurs in that area? Because it'd probably be nice if you knew you were going into an area where the Bigfoot's known as, you know, the being that eats people or something like that. You know,
especially
that. It's like those names have a reason. Like here in this area, we have Yaya Lee, friendly, whatever, and there's another name for I can't pronounce it very well, but it's basically that jerk Bigfoot that lives over in that other valley. That's the translation. And so it's kind of like, I don't think they like that Bigfoot very much.
No, I don't think so. It sounds like my neighbor, though, honestly. So, I mean, we all have that one neighbor. I did have another question about the book, real quick. I have an author that's on my moderator team and also in the chat, and she would like to know, how did you go about deciding on that title for your book and some of the legends that you included within the book?
I'm a notorious. I like colons a lot, so I like having titles and a colon, and then what the book's really about. And it was just that's what the book is about. Is that it's essentially the topics of what you're going to find utter monsters who were terrible. You're going to find the cannibals, and then there's giant stories, you know, where there's this large hairy type thing, and it's innocuous in the sense that it's just that hairy giant thing lives over there. So it's just kind of what the themes were that I was finding once I was reading everybody's traditional stories. What it seemed to be consistent with is that that's the groupings of those kinds of stories out there.
Okay. All right. Patrick Vaughn. Hi, Patrick. I'm a huge fan of Patrick. His research is the way he researches is a no nonsense type of research, and he's one of my favorite people to watch how he does his research and hear his post and see his post. He's very scientific, no nonsense. I very much enjoy it. Anyway, he asked, do you go out in the dark nights making yourself approachable doing communications?
No.
Okay.
I would say, you mean like walk out into the forest and talk to them?
Or maybe do calls. I'm not sure.
Oh, we do calls and we do wood knocks, that type of thing in the dark. But I don't go out and go, hey, Bigfoot, I'm here.
Okay. That was another follow-up question I had, actually, is that once you learned which tribe called the Bigfoot what in that region, did you ever go out and say, you know, hey, whatever the name was, because I can't remember what you just said.
Yeah, I did once because I had one of my dearest elders who taught me a lot about Bigfoot and gave me a lot of data. Before she passed away, she had asked me to go to a certain location and leave something in her honor for the Bigfoot. Mm-hmm. And it was going to make me cry. She was such a nice lady. And so I finally did that. I said, you know, she's been passed away a couple years now, and it's wrong that I haven't done what she asked me to do. And that's the only time I ever did that. I went to exactly where she told me to go. Very important area. It was just terrifying getting there too. I mean, I don't like edges, and it just had cliffs everywhere.
Yes.
And she probably knew that too. I bet she did that to me on purpose. But and I made a little satchel of what she told me to give as a gift, and I went into the forest and I talked to him with his traditional name, and I said this, she's leaving this for you, and I just want to let you know. And I stood there for a little while because I really, really hoped that, I would get some kind of answer, but I didn't. And then we left and we went home, and that's the only time I did it, in the sense just because she asked me to. But typically, I don't go, hey, yeah. Well, that's not true. I do sometimes goofing off here in the forest. I'll
Right.
go, hey, Hallie, I'm walking through. You're welcome to show yourself, kind of thing. But I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not serious about it. I'm more of just being whimsical and trying to scare whoever's with me too, because I enjoy that.
I can understand that completely. I would totally do that.
They just go, I swear, Kathy, if something comes out, we're going to get you. And I'm like, oh, yeah. Well,
No, you'll be so thankful or terrified that you will forget. Yeah. Okay, so follow-up question from Tactical Bigfoot Research. He wanted to know, have you actually found any flakes or stone tools at your research locations?
Yes, I have found flakes, but we were well aware that the landowner had told us he had found projectile points or arrowheads in that location before, and so it didn't surprise me. It was just a couple of pieces of obsidian. So an obsidian's not native to that region of Oklahoma, so we know it had to be brought in, traded with humans, and so it's native. It was Native American cause flakes. I'm pretty familiar with that, but other than that, not. Well, we did find these things that we're talking about where they're flat stones, and you can look at them where it looks like something's pounding something on top of it, like breaking up bones or something. And I do feel like those are Bigfoot related. So we don't know if it's nuts or there's plenty of nuts everywhere, but we do have found those in several locations now, where we call them nut cracking stations, but but it's clearly something was doing something, and the nut shells are still there. So that's not us doing it. So I mean, saying, but that's but it's not a modified tool in what we would consider like a modified tool. They picked up a rock, used it, and left it. It didn't have any value to them. They'll find another rock next time. So.
Yeah, there are plenty of other animals that do that same thing, you know, but not that size of stone, probably.
Yeah, and we have some information about that in that Wachita. I like saying Ouachita, right? Yes, that's how the locals say it. It's Wachita.
I do that. I butcher things on purpose just because that's how it sounds in my head. So Shay Shay wants to know, does your team, and I'm sure she's referring to NAWAC, does your team work with a primatologist? Is there a primatologist on your team?
Yes, we have. I don't know if he's currently in the group, but we have worked with one before, and he's been there. So, he's a mammalologist, or he's an expert in all animals.
Okay.
So I don't know what you call that, but yeah, he's been there before, several times actually.
Okay. Filmer of Bobcats has two great questions. First question, does the population at Area X understand human speech, do you think? It's hard to tell, but...
Yeah, it's hard to tell, but I do know that they do like telling each other when a new car comes in, because one time I was there, and they do it frequently, but one in particular, we were waiting for a team member to come back, and about 5 minutes before we could hear the engine, there was a smack, a wood knock so close to us. I can't believe we couldn't see anything. I mean, I don't know exactly where it came from, but it was like right there. And here, next few minutes, there's an engine coming. And that happens frequently. So we always figured they're letting everybody know something's coming in. And one thing I also know is that they try to keep track of you, but they can't count. So if you do a maneuver where there's a group of you and then one draws back, they don't realize that. So they can't count. Not that high anyway, if they know. If there's a group and they can't notice that there's 5 instead of 6.
I think my theory on that always has been that there's a sentinel. As soon as you walk in the woods, there's 1 or 2 watching you. Usually just 1, because my experience is every time I walk in the woods, you hear a tree knock. And then when you exit the woods, you hear a tree knock. And so they're letting you know, or letting their brethren know that, there's humans here. And so, of course, if there's just 1, they can't keep eyes on all of you.
No, they can't. And we've been pretty successful using that method in the field, where they just can't keep track with that many people, kind of thing. And I am always a firm believer that if there's 1, there's more than 1, because they tend to look out for each other. And if you feel like one time we had one basically we were coming down on them. Essentially, we had them captured, isolated. And next thing you know, and we still don't know how it happened, but next thing we know, we had 4 of them coming down on us. And basically, we're going to keep this one safe. And it's not uncommon where we have something happening over here, and then something will happen behind us to lure us away. So it's pretty common.
That's something that I tout a lot, is that they are masters of distraction.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I've had something on FLIR and a rock get thrown over here or directly in front of me, and I look back and it's gone. Every time.
Every day. Yeah, they're very, very good at that. And how they know one of their brethren are in danger or being seen, I don't know. I don't know how that is. I don't know if they emit something that, like a smell or something that the others can sense. I don't know.
They just have, excellent night vision, and they can, see that one's pinned down, and so this one just causes a distraction, and now that one's gone. I'm sure they train just like any animal, really, especially, primates, and they train their young to be alert to certain signals, to get out of danger.
Yeah.
So
I read that.
Filmer of Bobcats has this is a great question. Cannibals, do they eat other Sasquatches?
Oh, no, I don't have any stories. I've never heard a story where a Bigfoot ate another Bigfoot. It's Bigfoot eating us.
Okay.
And it can, typically children, but it can also be women. So.
Baby eaters?
Yep.
Baby eaters. Have you found that the stories of them eating us, have you found that a lot over?
A lot.
I mean, like over a vast area of the United States and
yes.
Okay.
It is the most common story there is.
Have you aligned that? I'm probably jumping off on a weird road here, but have you aligned the stories you've heard on that from Native Americans and everything with the missing 411? 411?
No, I have not.
Okay.
No, I have not.
Okay.
So, but I just haven't. Most of the time, I mean, as a realistic Forest Service employee, most people, and I don't mean it to sound like this, but they don't know what they're doing in the field. And
absolutely.
So literally, and my husband can back this up. I was in the wilderness one time with him. He was escorting me because I didn't want to go by myself, and I didn't have anybody else available. And we're doing some research in the wilderness, and next thing I know, I look up, and here comes 2 young girls in bikinis with beach balls, wearing flip-flops, with no water, no map, no nothing. And I said, oh, well, where are you guys going? And they go, well, we're going to go to this lake. And I was like, that's another 1.5 miles at least to get to. And, it was just, but I've seen that. I've had more experiences with people just being totally unaware of their surroundings, and people keeping ham sandwiches in their tents and then don't understand why a bear breaks through, and it's just like, so, and we find that commonly. And so it isn't surprising to me that we have missing people. Can some of those be because a Bigfoot is responsible? I'm sure. There's no reason not to think that that's a logical hypothesis, but it's not everybody. Right. Stupidity plays a huge factor.
Yes.
In some of.
I agree, definitely. There are weird, because I've seen the movies and the shows and all of that, and there are some weird situations in there that, they explained why these very experienced hikers, got themselves into some weird situations that a normal experienced hiker would not. So it's an interesting theory. Filmer Bobcats had another question, and I'm not sure if you subscribe to these theories or if you stick with Bigfoot and only Bigfoot, but do you think it's actually Bigfoot's eating humans or something else such as Dogman, Wendigo, etc.?
Well, I'm not, I don't study those other things, but in a lot of ways I think that they're actually really just Bigfoots. I don't believe that a dogman is really a dogman. I think it's just a different description of a Bigfoot. So humans, one thing as an anthropologist, you can only explain something to somebody based on your own experiences. So if I don't have a word for blue, then I can only tell you what I'm, like that, sky, kind of thing. And you meet sky people, and they're trying to convey something else to you. And if you don't you don't know what a Bigfoot is, or you didn't grow up with it, you see this hairy thing, outside. Sometimes they have snouts, sometimes they don't always, but
Right.
I think they're just, well, it was like a dog. It was like this, because
Yeah.
that's the only word they have to use to describe it. And, a wendigo, something with red glowing eyes
Mm-hmm.
and teeth, it's so. I mean, I don't think that the United States of America has 12 different cryptids running around. I
Right.
really think the long run, it's really mostly Bigfoot. And
Right.
so but I don't study. When somebody tells me dogman, I just go the other direction and I don't
Right.
really pay attention to it. So.
No, I can understand that. I steer away out of fear because werewolves are a huge trigger for me, and I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay
Yeah.
with sharing my woods with that. I'm not. That's
No,
that's
no.
my happy
I would
place.
stop going outside. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, nope.
Kevin Morrison said, "Hi, Kathy. Good to see you."
Hey,
And
Kevin.
he said, "Have you ever found nest or bedding areas in Area X?"
Not in X that I'm aware of. The
Okay.
only nest that I've seen, it was here in Sonora, California, and it was definitely a nest. There's little doubt that that's what that was. And
Okay.
so we haven't seen anything similar to that yet. And um, the area that I think one thing I can say about where we're at is I think it's a pass through.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost not consistent, but it's going one place and then coming back in the afternoon. Like there's something they got to pass through that location to go get, and we just haven't been able to figure out what it is that they're needing. That's someplace else. We
Mm-hmm.
kind of thought about salt. We kind of thought about water, and there's all kinds of things, but we haven't figured that out yet. So it's not.
Okay.
This would not be an area where we would find them sleeping.
Okay. That makes sense. So you've been researching for a long time. Many years. We won't say how many years if you're not comfortable with that, but many years.
Long time.
Long time. How has your view of this topic of Bigfoot changed from when you began to now? And what significant developments or discoveries changed your mind about these things?
I think mostly is my having experienced it myself. So like Sierra Sounds. I mean, although it's creepy, I don't know that I was ever a true believer in it, in the sense that and that of course comes from my national forest. That's where those were recorded. So it's an honor. And I do enjoy scaring people with that too. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I wouldn't have said I was a large believer in the samurai talk prior
Mm-hmm.
to this. And I could definitely say I was not a supporter of witnesses who would tell me that the Bigfoot was chasing their car and was keeping up with them at
Mm-hmm.
60 miles per hour. I would often just roll my eyes and go, sure they do. And I definitely 100% believe both of those things now. And so, but I think it took um, me to have that experience for it to go, oh, that's actually a true thing,
Yeah.
and it's a fact. So rock throws I always believed in. Tree knots, that was never anything that I had an issue with because other primates do the same thing. It was those things they were attributing to Bigfoot that were not typical,
Or
you know,
superhuman almost.
yeah, superhuman
Mm-hmm.
or not typical of other primates that I think I had issue with.
Okay. All right. So, hold on. We had another question. Um, whenever you okay, is your research book on Facebook? NAWAC is on Facebook,
Yes.
as well as the Alliance of Independent Bigfoot Researchers. That one's is that on Facebook as well?
Yes, it is.
Okay. All right. So Lori wants to know, how long do you typically stay out in the field whenever you go? And do you ever, my question, being a woman, do you ever go alone?
Yeah, I'm not afraid of going alone.
Okay.
That's what I did typically long before, I met Bob. I was a team of one. And I argued with myself, which is really unfortunate. But I've been in the field looking for Bigfoot next for it was 3 weeks at one time. But typically, if we're here locally, that's usually a couple of nights. Bob spent an entire summer 1 year out there, where he'd only come home once in a while. He was out there all summer.
I love that.
But Yeah, but typically when we go to X, it's between 1 and 3 weeks. But that's typical because it's such a long drive there. We might as well settle in and stay. So because it's it's a long drive, but that's pretty typical.
Okay, that's amazing. So a question. So I would like to go ahead and jump in because we're about a little over an hour in. If you could just tell us about your newest project that is airing tomorrow.
No, airing Tuesday.
Tuesday.
I thought tomorrow was the 5th. I totally lost time of
I thought it was the 5th tomorrow too. Okay, I'm sorry. Airing Tuesday,
the 5th. To work.
Yeah.
Yes, it's called The Proof is Out There, and it's on the History Channel. It's 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time or 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it is a brand new series, and they've already been green lighted for second season.
Oh, awesome!
And so it's right after the Curse of Oak Island, and so I guess that's an extremely popular program there. But essentially, and we had to film this during COVID, so you can imagine how entertaining that was. But it worked quite well.
Yeah.
But so people like Cliff Barrickman and other people, Chrissy Elliott and
Ken Gerhard.
Gerhard. What we were doing is basically looking at some video evidence of what the person who took the video thinks it is, or what they think they're portraying, and then our expertise using my anthropology, using my skill set of saying, well, this is what I think we're seeing, or saying, I don't agree, I think this is what it is, or, oh yeah, I think that is what it is, and just using science to evaluate what those videos or photographs or whatever they have potentially show. And so it's a half an hour show, but they put 2 back-to-back, so it's an hour starting on Tuesday, and I think the first show is about Orang Pendek, and so I know right. I'm on that.
Awesome.
And some of these videos are quite amazing, and some are a little on the terrifying side, where you're going,
good.
I don't think I like that very much, and and it's some I was not as valuable in my sense of what that doesn't going to prove anything, and it's not helping anything. Versus there was at least one that I think is probably one of the most significant videos ever taken in the last 50 years easily. And that's so wonderful. It's pretty important. And so so we'll see what happens for the next season. But it was pretty entertaining serving. Because the producer was on another screen, and there was only one other person in the room, and that's unlike, because most of the shows that I do, there's a group of people.
Yes.
There's one person that handles the lighting, and one person who handles this, and this one guy did it all. And
oh so my goodness!
Pretty spectacular, and but it was fun in the sense, and they weren't really supposed to tell me who else was on the show, but he several times said, "Oh, Cliff, blah blah blah," and I said, "Cliff Barrington," and they go, "Yeah," and I said, "Hi, I know him." So
yeah.
So I don't know if it was meant to be a secret or not, but anyway, they spilled the beans on a couple of people who were on the show. So
well, I'm excited to watch it. I know that Weird Realities just plugged the link in the chat room. I am really excited to see this show. I think it's going to be good. It's going to be up there with Legend Meets Science. I mean, it's going to be.
We'll see. I know there's a lot of topics. UFOs. They did Dogman. They did Bigfoot, of course. They did all kinds of different topics. Serpents. Water serpents. UFOs. I said that. What else? Some of them I chose not to participate in because I just doesn't do any good to ask me, do you think this is this? And I go, no.
Yeah.
Anything else to say?
That's the whole bit. No.
Yeah, no.
I have nothing to.
I don't participate in those. Isn't there was one, I think all of us universally said, really?
Oh, yeah.
I should be on this show, and they did drop that one because it was just obvious what it was.
Right, yeah.
So, anyway, I had a good time.
Yeah. I wonder if that was the rake, if you guys were like, and you don't have to tell me, but just so many times I have had people ask me to have a show about the rake, and I get overwhelming feedback from everyone else saying, that's a hoax, that's an internet hoax, that's not real, and I'm just like,
it was the rake.
Was it really?
Yes, it was. And I kept going, what the hell's a rake?
That's what
I'm
I
looking
said.
it up, and I'm like, this is a made-up word. I don't think this really exists.
I'm like, how did you guys come up with a word for that?
Yeah.
Monstrosity that is clearly not a thing. So, okay.
Yeah.
Well, good.
Yeah, it was,
that was
right.
Okay.
I didn't participate well with that one.
So. I wouldn't have either. I have a really bad habit of my face showing exactly what I think about things, and so I have, which on a video interview is kind of a downfall sometimes, but, so far I've had amazing guests on that my face clearly shows that I love you guys. Y'all are amazing.
Okay.
Do you have any other projects planned? Any other books?
I'm always planning a book, but it doesn't mean I get any time to do it. But probably not. I mean, I never know anything until, I had to turn down several shows this past year just because of the COVID, and I was not interested in, flying into the center of where all the contamination was.
Yeah.
And so,
putting yourself at risk.
Yeah, it's not worth the risk. And, because I've got, my children and my grandchildren, and I'm just not interested in my mom and dad and everything else, and maybe the source of their downfall. And so, so nothing, this is the only one I actually went through. I turned down the other ones. And so, as far as I know, that'll be, unless something else comes down the pike, season 2 potentially, but not particularly right now.
Okay. All right. I mean, hey, after 2020, it's like, I feel like take things slow. You can pick and choose what you want to do,
Yeah, and I turned down conferences, and I always kind of was like weirded out by that. It's like, why would you be having a conference in the middle of COVID? Because, you have to have reduced people,
right.
You can't have as many, and so does it really work that well when you only have, 50 people in the audience? I mean, how do you afford to have it? And so, but well, hopefully 2021 will be a much, much better year. But we do plan to go back to X this year. And
okay,
so, it's all, we should have the vaccine by then, so it shouldn't be any issue. And to be fair, we were in there this past year, but we were very careful not to, nobody who was sick was allowed to go, to make sure we don't pass anything on to, did we ever figure out Bigfoot was real? No, he died of COVID because of the oops, that would not look good.
No, it's, and like, as much as I love researching and I love seeing all my people and everything, it's scary. It's scary. Like, I went to a conference and I remember walking into the room, the banquet room, and it was like hot and moist and stale, and I just felt like I was breathing everybody's breath, their COVID tainted breath, as I walked in, and I just kind of backed out and like took a breath, and I was like, I don't know if I can go in there. I just don't know if I feel okay with that, and I went to other outdoor conferences, and that was okay. That felt really great. You can stand back and chat, and it's good.
Yeah, but it's those indoor ones, and those are typically so packed with,
it was packed
in, and it's just, you have to do what you feel comfortable with, and that's how I live my life. I don't live my life for anybody but myself and my family. And
right, peer pressure means nothing to you.
No, I could care less.
I mean, this is the one that chases Bigfoot, like literally sees a Bigfoot and runs at it. So, I mean, your peer pressure means nothing to this woman.
No, couldn't care less. So, and I don't need to. I have a job, so I don't need to add additional things onto my list of things to do. So
from home, especially, it's yeah,
we should have done it at home conferences. That would have been fun.
I think
there's a conference of people doing it on Zoom. They just take their time. That would have been fun, actually.
Yeah, there are a couple of those going on. Patrick said there's too much hot air. That's you're not wrong, Pat. You're not wrong. Okay, one last question. If you could research with any one past or present, who would it be? Besides Bob. Bob doesn't count.
Oh, fine. Well, I have Bigfooted with Bob Gimlin several times, so...
Not that Bob.
Oh, you mean Strain?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I Bigfoot him all the time. I think I would have liked to have gotten to know Krantz a little better. Mm-hmm. He, even though we'd spoke before he passed away, and he gave me some good advice, I didn't get a chance to do anything with him, and that would have been, I think, important. He's pretty significant. I knew John Green before he passed. I know Peter Byrne. And so he would be the person, I think, that, of course, Jane Goodall would be fun too. But, that's never going to happen.
I know.
But yeah, I think I could have learned a lot from Grover. Like I said, he did pass on some valuable information, but not near as much as I would have liked to have gotten. And so I really admire him greatly. And, I knew John Bendernagle, and I know Jeff Meldrum, and I know I Bigfooted with Rick Knoll. I mean, there's a lot of people I have Bigfooted with.
Right.
And so he's the one that I think could have given me some advice and of what I'm doing wrong or what I could do better.
Right.
Especially then. Back then, I really could have used it because I was definitely not as skilled as I am now, of course.
Yeah. Well, that's excellent. So
and now I remember to take the camera out of my pocket instead of just going, wonder where my camera is. I think it's in my backpack back in the car 1 mile back that direction.
Next step is taking the lens cap off of the camera and making sure your batteries.
I'm starting to get there. So.
It's a process. Do you have anything else you want to add? Anything else you need to cover?
No.
Okay.
No, I really enjoyed myself. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on and continuing my Ladies Month. So this is,
awesome.
I'm doing Ladies Month. I'm promoting female researchers in the field. I think that's something that's near and dear to my heart, being raised by a veteran female researcher and having women like you as role models to help me get out there and help me feel confident in my research and confident being out there shoulder to shoulder with the dudes,
Yeah. Well, my greatest advice that I've always given women is, don't be afraid. Don't be fearful. The worst thing that can happen is Bigfoot kills you. Hopefully they'll grab some hairs. He's killing you. So
that's what I always
DNA,
say. That's what I always say.
So don't be afraid of anything. There's humans are more scary than Bigfoot, in my opinion. I'd rather run into a Bigfoot or a bear than somebody growing a marijuana plant out there.
Absolutely.
Not interested.
Meth heads and hogs. That's what I'm terrified of.
Yep.
That's my nightmare fuel right there. And spiders.
Oh, yeah. Area X has a lot of spiders, and they're like this big. So.
Well, if I have to brave the spiders to find Bigfoot, I guess I will get past it and make it happen.
Yeah, you just learn to take a stick where you're walking and you just twirl it in front of you.
Yes.
I'm sure Bigfoot's going, this is some kind of human mating call. Maybe it's not.
I always send someone ahead of me. I call them a silk blazer and just send them ahead of me and they can collect all that spider webs. That's all them.
Yeah, it doesn't do me any good to be that lead person because I'm this tall and everybody else is up here, so they're still going to eat the spider web no matter what I do. I usually walk under them.
There you go. Well, thank you so much for coming on tonight, Kathy. I'm honored to have you on the show, and I know that everybody was just looking forward to having you on so much, because you're just a fount of information.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you again for coming on, and good luck with your works. And we look forward to seeing your newest project, The Proof is Out There, which airs Tuesday evening. And in the second season, which is, already been approved. That's awesome. That means we can binge watch, you guys. Binge. All right. Thank you so much, Kathy. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Good night.
Good night.
Okay, everybody, I want to thank Kathy again for coming on. She was a fantastic guest, and I'm so blessed, you guys, to have such amazing guests on that just teach us so much. I don't know about you, but I learn so much from every single guest. I appreciate everybody who showed up for the live show and asked questions of Kathy. You guys really helped get the best of that interview going on because, we just get all different views to ask her. So our next guest is actually Mary Joyce, and she is also a Bigfoot author and covers a variety of topics that we'll be talking about, one of which is the Cherokee Little People. That is not something I'm super familiar with, but I'm definitely interested in it. So you guys, definitely tune in. That will be January 17th. Continuing with our Ladies Month theme that we have going on here to support female researchers. So thank you again for tuning into the show tonight. I hope you guys liked it. Please drop a comment and let me know what you thought of the show, as well as who you would like to see me interview in the future. And don't forget to check out Nightcallers Bigfoot Radio social media sites, as I mentioned earlier, for extra content and info on upcoming shows. We do have a Nightcallers Bigfoot Radio fan page, which is a private Facebook group, which is an extension of our live chat. You can go in there, you can network, you can continue the conversations from the chat. Unless they were mean, then I'm going to have to kick you out. And you can promote your own stuff in there at this time. So you guys stay safe, stay open-minded, and be kind, you guys. I will see y'all next time.